Hello, how are you guys? This is my very first Facebook Live. Thanks for joining us today. While we're going through, if you have any questions, feel free to put those into the chat box. It's been kind of a crazy morning. It's been crazy. Lots of people calling. We're getting things done. We're taking care of clients. It's been good. It's been productive. Hope yours is going well as well. We're just going to wait for a few more people to jump in. Did I mention this is my first one? Hi, I'm Tina Herndon. I'm a certified financial counselor for the Citizen Potawatomi Community Development Corporation, and thank you for joining me for my very first Facebook Live. I wanted to talk about a relevant subject during the COVID-19 craziness. It's how to manage money when money is scarce. Right now, no one has enough money. Everyone's worried about their financial position, but here are a few tips just to make those hard decisions just a tiny bit easier. First, cutting expenses or increasing income are really our only choices when our expenses exceed our income. So making those two hard choices is the only thing we have to do. So right now what I'm going to talk about is both of those, increasing income, and we're going to decrease our expenses. First, make a list of your needs and wants. Narrow down to the needs only when or if needed. That way, if you have a list of wants and a list of needs, then you can address those needs first, and then your wants can be right in line in your priority. Always take a list to the grocery store, but only buy what's on the list. That's really a hard thing to do. I have a hard time with that as well. I have an app on my cell phone and I just check it off as I buy things. You can activate your smart shopping choices. So shop at stores that offer rewards through their loyalty programs. The Fire Lake Discount Foods here on this side of town is a great resource for that. They have a loyalty program that will actually get you some free stuff. So that's always nice. Use your coupons and rewards and combine them whenever possible. A lot of times you can stack those discounts on top of each other. When you shop on sale, remember to combine those. So you may have a smart shopping strategy before you go to the store so that you don't forget that you actually have those available to you. And before you borrow, try looking at your skills and assess those first. Sometimes you have ways of making money that you never thought of doing. So you could teach a class. If you have skills that other people have want, maybe someone has said, oh, I wish I could do that. Now's your time. They can do this for the low price of $9.99. You can also try to do something unique. If you have a skill that you can do that most people can't, maybe your grandmother taught you how to sew, maybe you do beadwork, or you're an amazing seamstress, this would be a time to, if you don't want to teach others, maybe you can make something that other people would want to buy. Refinishing furniture is one that I've always wanted to learn, but I don't know if I have that skill or not because no one's taught me how to do that yet. So if anyone out there knows how to do that, I might be your first $9.99 class or student. Also, could you barter for that item that you need or want? If you can trade, maybe your neighbor needs their lawn mowed and you need date night. So you could mow your neighbor's lawn and then you can take care of their kids for date night or vice versa. Can you paint? Maybe they need the outside of their house painted and you need a cup of sugar. I don't know. But that might be something that you're able to barter and get things a little cheaper. Could you sell something that you won't have to replace later? We don't want to burn the furniture just to heat the house. But if you have an extra TV and that you never, ever, ever have turned on in 2 years, maybe that's something we want to sell for to replace money in the immediate. Could you perform a service, maybe mowing lawns or taking care of yards or babysitting or something like that? Sometimes that can be something that can increase our income. And could you create something to sell? We kind of talked about that earlier, but those are some easy ways of increasing income that most people don't think of whenever they're in that survival mode. The next thing is you can plan and conserve. So if you've planned to be without money at some point or save for that, then you've conserved enough that you are able to go without some income for a period of time. If you plan where your money is going to go, it has a better chance of making it to that category. So what I like to say is break it down by whatever check is coming into your house and have a plan for each of those sets of income. That way you make sure it goes where it wants, because if you don't have that plan, a lot of times it ends up just going. The COVID provisions and protections will not last forever, right? You're not being evicted. We're not having any disconnects right now, but we may be putting ourselves in a position where we're going to have that happen to us later. So you just want to think as long-term as possible so that you're prepared whenever things happen. And if you can pay right now that's really the best solution, because that way you don't end up paying owing several months at the end. And now is not the time to splurge. Ask yourself if what you're buying is a necessity. Even if you're working now, we don't know what the immediate future is going to hold. So maybe being a little more conservative right now might be a good solution for us. Ask if what you're buying is a necessity, and everyone's necessary items are different. Sometimes cable is the necessary item, and so for some people, they wouldn't dream of making that a need. Everyone's different, and that's perfectly okay. But one thing that I am seeing a lot of that I would just encourage you to look at if it's needed are home improvement projects. Most of those cost, and if those cost, then is now really the time to be getting into those. And can you afford to buy right now? Sometimes time and money don't come at the same time. So right now we have lots of time, but our money, it may be something that we want to conserve right now. So maybe not buying now, but you can always save it. And then if you still have money at the end, when everything starts to recover, then that's the time. Then you'll be able to do that with no guilt. And that's what I have today. Any questions from anyone?
So we have a question from one viewer. How do I start a budget?
Great question. What I like to do is first start with that needs versus wants analysis. So you have your needs, you have your wants, and then you start with your needs. I like to put them in order by date, and then I make a plan for each paycheck that comes into the house. So I don't make a monthly budget, I make a bi-weekly, because that's what works in my household. And every check that comes in has a plan attached to it. And yes, I do have a spend category. That's the most important part of a budget, because we're going to do it. And if we don't plan for that, then it comes out of something important.
Next question, are using gift cards safe, or is it better to use cash?
That really depends on the person. For me, when I use debit cards or any type of card transaction, it doesn't hurt me. It is, it's easy for me to do that, and I don't even think about it. But when I have to hand someone cash and they don't give me the full amount back, that is when it hurts me to spend. And so I need to see that dwindling, not just a number that's electronically generated from an account. I need to actually see that being reduced physically. So my spend category, I tend to use cash, but that's not always the safest depending on your environment.
What's the best way to check my credit, and how often should I be looking at that during this COVID-19 epidemic?
As often as you'd like. The more the merrier. There are a lot of credit monitoring services that are free. One thing I always remind people is think of who's paying for your service if it is free. So some of the tips may have a slant to them. So if credit cards and loan companies are paying for that site to be in existence, then you just want to be careful about the information that they give you. A lot of times the credit information is correct, but the tips on how to build credit might not always have your best interest in mind. But you can always go to annualcreditreport.com. I'll say that again. It's annualcreditreport.com. And that is a direct link to the credit bureaus to check your personal credit once a year, completely and totally for free. What I recommend is every 4 months, pull a different one, because there are 3 major credit bureaus. So, maybe in January, pull your TransUnion report, April, pull Experian, and so on and so forth. That's usually a way to keep on top of it, and that is straight from the horse's mouth. Any other way of checking your credit report is not directly from the credit bureaus themselves. A lot of times the information is accurate. Almost always it's accurate information and it reflects what the credit bureaus are saying, but it is a third party.
Can I get a part-time job while furloughed?
That's a sticky one. With unemployment, you do have to, if you're on unemployment, you do have to report that to the unemployment agency, and that can affect the amount you have that they're actually paying you. But sometimes up to the limit that they have, that can be a nice little bonus to what you're making. When I say nice little bonus, none of that is probably going to completely cover your income. So you already have a reduction in income. So whatever that threshold is, it used to be $100. I haven't looked at it recently. Then if that's $400 extra you can earn a month without any penalty, then that might be something to consider.
How much money should you put away if you're anxious about your job status?
I would say as much as possible, but remember that if you put too much in your savings account all at once, so you go from nothing to say $500 putting into your savings account, that may be too big. And you'll do that for a short amount of time, but you may not stick with that long term. So right now is a time to conserve, but as the economy recovers, I would encourage you to readdress that, because when we start stepping outside of our homes again, that might not look the same, and that's not a failure. That is an adjustment in our plan.
Is there a good budget book or spreadsheet that you would recommend?
I make my own because everyone knows I'm an Excel nerd. But there are a lot of apps out there, and everyone has a different way of doing that. But what I say is whatever will work for you, whatever makes it super simple. But one thing I do recommend is writing it out one time, making that plan one time, and then reverting back to that every pay period. So if you choose to do it on paper, which is perfectly fine, I recommend making out a plan where you can just make 11 copies of it, put it in a binder, and boom, your budget for the year. Right now, things are kind of temporary, so probably maybe making a 6-month plan instead of a forever plan might be more appropriate. But I definitely recommend writing that out. When you keep it in your head, that's a lot more stress than you have to be carrying around.
Is there any good tip that you would have about how we should use our stimulus money at this point?
Yes, save it. As much as possible, save it. If there's something you absolutely have to have right now, then that is what it's actually for. Make sure that you stay up with your utility payments, your rent payments, all of that. But that would be my advice for for the stimulus.
What is your opinion on the payment deferment options that are available right now? What's the pros and cons?
I could probably say that in one pro and one con. The pro is right now you're not having to make a payment, and that may delay any type of collection activity. However, it will catch up with you, which is a huge con. So if you don't have to use those right now, they are not in your best interest. Especially with vehicle payments, another con is it's a losing proposition already when you buy a vehicle. Most of the time, most of your loan, you're upside down, which means you owe more than you own of that vehicle. When you defer payments, that means that gap is going to last longer, because now you're 3 months behind on your amortization schedule, which is a schedule that says where your principal and interest is going. And so it's reducing your principal less and less. Plus you have to get caught up on that interest. For most people, they're not deferring that interest. So that means interest is accruing the entire time that it's being deferred, which will end up costing you more money in the long run. All right, any other questions? Going once, going twice. All right, well,
See us back here next week.
thank you for spending time with me today and all of your great questions and interactions. And if you'll join me next week on tips to create a plan for spending. So a lot of those tips, some of those tips I gave you today, but we will expand on those tips as well. So hope to see you back next week.
We just had one final question. Should you buy a new car regardless of your job status?
No, now is not the time to buy a new vehicle. I would not make any long-term decisions when we're having short-term issues. I see that on the news a lot. I'm constantly seeing commercials for auto companies especially, but unless your car will not make it through COVID, it's not the right time.
What is the safest budget app?
Safest. I'm not a big fan of budgeting apps because I feel like all of them, you have to give too much information. I don't want to link anything digitally to my bank account, so I don't really recommend apps. All right. Well, thank you again, and next week we will be talking about how to create a plan for our spending. I look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks. Bye.